he said to them, okay, when you pray, say this, or here's the prayer. And Father, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Give us each day our daily bread. And we should have verse 4 there it is. And forgive us of our sins, for we also forgive everyone who sins against us. And lead us not into temptation. Back in the beginning of August, we started a conversation called Concrete. And if you've forgotten the name, it should be on the screen. It's also on that wall over there. And we gave people cards, which we'd like to continue to, for you to have on the next step table. It's just the size of a business card as a remembrance of what Concrete's about, the series. There are 4 components to this, what you build your life on as a follower of Jesus. The first one was community, this. And community is not just your friends, though it could be your friends, obviously, but your friends and family. And as you know, you don't pick your family. You get dropped into your family. And some of us would not have chosen our families, but they're your family. And so in the spiritual realm, you get dropped into a community. And maybe you wouldn't have picked this family, but we are your family. And it's the first place where you have an opportunity to actually exercise the muscles of patience and generosity, kindness, forgiveness, because you bump up against people that perhaps, you would not have chosen them to be in your community. So we came to the conclusion at the end of that talk that community may include your friends, but it's not just your friends. It includes people who you wish weren't there at times. Then we spoke about the idea of Christ and what that person is. And as many of you know, Mosaic has used a tagline, or often has talked about the idea of belonging, believing, and then becoming. So community is about our belonging component. But having a conversation about Christ is our believing component. We believe, and I'm telling you right up front, that our agenda is to help every man or woman that we know that walks in here connect to God through their Savior, Jesus Christ. That's it. If someone invited you here, that's what they're hoping will happen for you. And we believe that when a man or woman connects to their Savior, Jesus Christ, that they become a living being for the first time. You're born once as a human being, but you're born again to become a living being and to actually achieve and become everything that you were designed to be. All the gifts and talents and the elegant way that you were designed and made. Every man, every woman has a plan, a God-given plan. And while that may sound a bit confining and predeterministic and fatalistic, it actually is the most beautiful, elegant thing you can step into. And here's the other part of it. You still have a choice in the matter. But this morning, as we continue our believing component of this conversation, we're talking about prayer. And I think to change maybe the idea of prayer in our heads is to use the word conversation. This word we chose specifically because we have you ever been in a group of people that they're talking normal, right? And all of a sudden, it's great, and we should pray about that. And all of a sudden they go to King James, British accents for some reason. It's strange, sort of. What happened? Did you just lose your mind? And some of us perhaps who were never raised Roman Catholic, and we look at some of our Roman Catholic friends and go, oh, this repetitive prayer, it can be so mindless. And prayer beads, like some of our friends in the Buddhist or Hindu religions, or our Roman Catholic friends with rosaries. Oh, that's kind of silly. Until you have actually stepped into that moment where you have deep, significant, repetitive prayer, perhaps you really don't know what that is happening for a person. For many of you, perhaps one of the most powerful things you've done in prayer is to write your prayer out. Okay, this is what I'm doing. Some of you call it journaling. You're sharing, as it were, in a conversation, but in a written form, where you're at as a person to God. The conversation we've used for this meeting, for this purpose, is that it is a kind of a two-way thing that's happening here. You're not always dominating the conversation, but the main goal in the conversation is to get to yes. Not God getting to yes, for us to get to yes. That's worth tagging. The goal is to get to yes. The goal is for me to get to yes. Because God is not silent. He will speak. But He speaks to those who wish to hear. So prayer is, I think the worst thing that can happen, and I'm cautious about this because it's very easy for a pastor to come up here and say, you guys don't pray enough. I mean, who thinks, right now, honestly, who thinks they pray enough? Like, I pray enough. I'm good. Yeah, I don't need to pray another minute. Because if I did, it'd be like bragging at that point. I pray enough. No one thinks that. No one thinks they prayed enough. You could spend an hour, 2 hours in prayer, and you still would think, I didn't pray enough. How many of you have done that thing where you read a book about great godly men and women who have spent hours in prayer? Their physical body has changed. They were known as camel, knee people because they spend so much time on their knees in prayer. You go, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to do that. I'm going to write a list and pray for everything I know. And you have a list, and you get down on your knees, but there's a pillow because it's hard. And you did lotion your knees, why get them all nasty? And so you start to pray, and you're praying for everything, you're praying for puppies, you're praying for your neighbors, you're praying for everything, right? And then in his name, awesome. You stand up 3 minutes, and you're like, how do they do that? Are they reading when they're done? Do they fall asleep and wake up? And, oh man, is that what happened? And people often, realize when we say amen, that it's like, let everybody know it's over. When it means, so be it. So the goal here is this. The goal is not to pray more. Please don't walk out of here thinking, I'm going to pray more. If you heard that, you heard it correctly. So I'm saying it right now. It's not the idea of praying more. It's the idea of connecting to your Father in heaven. When Jesus starts off telling us and his followers, this is how you pray, the first word out of his mouth is, you're speaking to your Father. And he even shifts, he could have said you're speaking to a holy God who wants to be your Father. He shifts it and says, this is your Father who is a holy God. For many of us, I realize that Father is not it's not a positive term. I totally get that. And yet, for what we have as an ideal of what fatherhood ought to be, that's everything that our God is, and then some. He is your Father in heaven, who cares for you, loves you. And for many of you, some of you are young dads, and some of you are older dads, you know what it's like to see and want your kids to thrive and survive, thrive and do well and just excel in their lives, to be happy, to achieve all that they can achieve. You get that if you're a father. You get that if you're an uncle. You get that if you have any young person in your life, a small girl, small boy that you care for. Like you care for them. Now this is the Father in heaven who has no diminishment of evil or darkness. There's no limits to him who he is. And he says, I'm first your Father. I care about you. I also happen to be a holy God. If you connect to me in one thing first, remember this, I'm your Father for you. So being just committed to prayer only is too small, and to be, quote, people of prayer might be the wrong thing. If it's only about becoming people who pray more, like that somehow that it's about a quantity of prayer, or the right language of prayer. Have you heard this? People say you have to pray a certain way, so you're praying for the right Jesus. Okay, a couple of you have heard that. I don't know, I think Jesus knows who he is, don't you? I'm not sure who's talking to me. Really? And by the way, I say that half joking, but I also hear sometimes people say, well, you don't believe the right thing, so how do we know you're talking about the right Jesus? Once again, I think Jesus knows who he is. If the goal is only to pray more, listen, if the goal is only to pray more, we're not any different from religious people who pray. And by the way, if you have any Buddhist or Eastern religious friends, you know that they pray a lot. I recall waking up in India. I don't know how I got there. I recall waking up in India. I purposely went there, where 4:45, it was the call to prayer for our Muslim friends. I'm thinking, 4:45, I'm not sure God exists. Look at my brain. There was this amazing woman my wife and I knew from Starbucks, because we didn't have friends outside of Starbucks for a while. And she was a Coptic, an Egyptian Christian, Coptic believer. And their services last 4 to 6 hours. But you know what they primarily do during those 4 to 6 hours? Pray. Her husband was a contemporary of our former governor, Anand. And in fact, her husband, who is now a Coptic priest, was in the film Pumping Iron back in 1969. So the dude is yoked. I mean, just, still massive. His son, who's also trained, is just this handsome, amazing guy who's also yoked. And he mentioned, he was asking me about, I'm having trouble meeting women, and I don't know what do I need to do? And I thought, wow, if you are having trouble meeting women, thank God I already got married, because I was no hope, none. Handsome, godly, tall, And here's he said the problem was. He says most girls don't like to pray as long as I do. Usually I'd have a 4-hour, 5-hour prayer schedule. You're dying alone, bro. Get a dog, because that's going to be your companion. So I'm telling you, if you walk out of here thinking, I'm going to pray more, you missed the point. It's an ongoing prayerful conversation, an ongoing conversation with my Savior, an ongoing conversation because He's everywhere with you at all times. And He's your Father who loves you. He's your Father who loves you. And He's a holy God who's capable. God hears, God answers, but He meets us, it seems to be, in the moments of having conversation with Him. And you know what this is like. You know exactly what this is like. How many times have you, again, I'll speak to a husband and wife pattern, but usually this is the one that's most intense, but it could happen boyfriend, girlfriend. You and your wife, or you and your girlfriend, somebody significant to you, you're having an argument, and you're just thinking, I just want this to end. I just want her to shut up. I'm just done. And so you say, okay, look, I'm sorry. All right? And then you know that she didn't accept that apology, but she does, you handle it and you shut her down. And then you see that she's still kind of in the mood. You go, oh, man, I can't believe her, man. She didn't accept my apology. You know why? Because you didn't give one. We're just handling it. You're just shutting her down. But there's a huge difference when stuff is, I've just noticed when I'm not explaining, I just say, I'm sorry, Louis. It's a huge difference. So it's never, listen, this is another tweetable, taggable thing. It's not about the language. It's the location of where that prayer comes from. It's not the language, it's the location from where that prayer comes from that's meaningful. This is why at times people have said, wow, that's really harsh. How could you say that to that person? Well, it wasn't harsh because it came from a place where I love them. It would be harsh if I didn't care about them. It would be harsh if I wanted to hurt them. But it comes from a place where I love them. And so at times I know that part of what makes us a bit uncomfortable with our prayer life is because we're talking to a person who does know us and kind of calls us on our phoniness and our nonsense. And we don't maybe want to hear what someone who knows everything about us is going to say to us. Let's just not be afraid anymore of that. For this reason, He's for you. It's not harsh because He loves you. Prayer is not about the language, it's about the location where it originates from. So we hear God speak. And then we do the thing that most people, this is a word even I still kind of struggle with, so if you do, I'm with you. And then we obey. The only time obey is cool is when it's Andre the Giant, that logo, that thing on walls. But obey, can you make it a suggestion? Even the word commands. God commands you to do this. I realize that there's just still enough of a rebel, or I don't know, there's still enough in me that says, I don't want to be told what to do. Okay? If you are like that person, you don't like to be told what to do. Can I get an amen? Amen. Amen. The rest of you are liars as well. I just don't like it. Who does? Who wants to be told, Bob, you need to do this? And I think my wife calls this the Martinez finger, by the way. She always says the Martinez finger because, well, I don't know, my brother and my sister, we all do it. We just bolster that bad boy. The point is that doesn't it feel like when you're being told, like someone's pointing their long, bony, judgmental finger in the middle of your chest and say, this is what you got to do. This is what's happening. And perhaps, you were that guy that got beat up in school, or you were always small, and you don't like to be told what to do because you felt you've been told to do all your life. And you might have been. But listen, this one is different. Why? He's your Father in heaven who loves you and happens to be a holy God. So if your Father in heaven is saying, hey, this is what needs to happen for you in your life. Now, this should be happening. I know you have this issue that you're not dealing with. You've been trying to avoid this conversation. Even if there was a finger pointing at you, it would still come from a hand that was nail pierced for you. Because it's a hand of kindness. I just don't see this with God. I see this. Don't you? So yes, obey makes sense. I know it makes sense. I know it does. And it's not until I'm in a moment of prayer that I can finally say, I need to do this. Or better, I want to do this. And you know why? Because I realize He loves me. And that is so compelling. It draws me to love Him back. John talks about this. You know, you might have heard well-meaning pastors or other Bible teachers, your parents, somebody in a church say, you need to love God more. You need to trust God more. And you go, okay, well, how do I do that? I'll tell you how it happens. When you connect to your Father in heaven, who is a holy God, and recognize and sense and experience His love for you, it compels you to love back. John wrote about this, that we love God because what? He first loved us. So obeying is submitting to, deferring to, bowing to, yielding to, giving in to, adhering to, conforming to, keeping to, sticking to. Because God is not giving suggestions. He is giving us commands. Because He's our Father who is for us and a holy God. I know it makes you work. I understand how you're built. I have nothing but your best interest in mind. And I want you to be part of fixing humanity, so I'm going to start with you. And I want this for the people to know and see that they can become a living being for once. And when the more often you hear His voice speak to you in prayer, it becomes music. It's beautiful. In fact, you know what it becomes? I don't know, I'm thinking of drugs. It becomes like a hit. You need it. You need it. You need to hear from your Father in heaven, who is a holy God and who loves you. Now let me suggest there's a pattern to some of the prayers that we ask. The kind of prayer that I would say God responds to. Is that fair? Because many of you say, well, if God answered all my prayers, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? Those of us who are older, I would say past 40 or so, aren't you glad that God didn't answer all your prayers? Right? Any of you ever gone back to your high school reunion after 20, 30 years and you think, oh, God, I'm not doing it. Yikes.
Amen.
Not double it. I hear you, man. And God bless you for responding. What is the kind of prayer that God responds to? The kind of prayer that moves you forward in your journey towards Him. Listen, the kind of prayer He answers is the one that moves you forward in this journey towards Him. Now, and also for the benefit of humanity. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 18. 1 Kings chapter 18. Amazing story. This has got to be a movie, hopefully one of these days. And so what's happening is simply this. There was Israel was in a state of confusion. It was being split and torn. And many times this is kind of where we're at as people. We believe in God, and yet we like being part of the weird darkness that we used to also enjoy. So we try to mix the two. And God, through the prophet Elijah, is saying, I need you to choose. In fact, let's do this. Let's choose the one, the God that answers by fire. So whoever answers by literal fire from heaven, let's make that God. And I thought, okay, that's cool. Let's go with that. And so the prophets of Baal, this God of thunder and lightning, prayed. He prayed that Baal would respond. And if you read 1 Kings 18, the author puts in, but no one answered, no one heard. And Elijah gets up to pray. It says, at that time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Please leave that up there for a second. Let it be known today that you are God in Israel. Let it be known that you are God in Israel. Thank you, Kimber. You could say it this way. God answers the prayers that push Him forward into the hearts and minds of people. He answers the prayers that push you forward towards Him and push Him forward into the lives of other people. So often it is, and I get this, it's not that God's not into the details. But when you think about the things that you pray about and ask God about and want to hear about, generally, isn't it really about us? And this is not, you guys are awful for doing this. I do this. Who do you pray for the most when they're really in a dark place? Who's on your mind the most? People you love, right? Your daughter who's not doing so hot. Your spouse who's just drinking way too much. Maybe a close friend at work that you've worked with for years, and you see him or her making destructive decisions that you know is going to bring some darkness on their life. Because they're the closest ones to you. Now, I'm going to suggest that, of course, God is interested in that. But when we start to pray about things only about us, I just don't know if that's really the highest value of prayer. What if it meant, hey, God, this person bugs me. I'm angry at this person, so they may never apologize. Help me forgive them. This person has done me wrong, this, that, and the other. Help me live out what Paul talked about, learning to be content and rather suffer the loss than trying to make sure that I'm right. What if you knew the Scriptures well enough that you could make your prayer life correspond to what the Scriptures teach, what you're supposed to be like? See, that would move you further into your journey with Jesus and help God be pushed further into the lives of humanity. Because this is what I know. And I'm convinced of this. I've seen it over the years. Almost every single time that a man or woman comes to Jesus that you know well, especially a family member, they come because you changed, not because you preach. You want to go to church. Really? You want to learn how to live like Jesus. They don't come. You learn to become like Jesus and actually do that. And not, by the way, this is not, okay, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to wash my mouth. I'm not going to drink this much. I'm not going to, It's not about how much willpower you have. It's about how much God has changed you through moments of prayer. Stop preaching. Continue praying to connect to your Father in heaven, who's a holy God. Experience His love. Experience His compassion. It has a healing effect on you. And on the other side of that is freedom. And you won't have to invite people. You should. They'll want to know, now, why are you different? What happened to you? You used to be an awfully angry person. What happened? Jesus. Right now, before I get into what prayer is also, we're going to hand out some scrolls to you with a pen. So we can get those out, and we can put that first word up there, Mr. Sanders. I'll tell you the type of prayer that exists. The first type of prayer in the Bible is help. I need help. I'm struggling in this area. My marriage, my job, my finances, my body, my heart, my emotions. Help is the prayer, it's the biblical way of saying supplications and petitions. But instead of using that word, I'll just say, help. I need help. It's the place where in prayer you admit that I'm weak and I can't figure this out anymore. It's the place where you say, I give up. I'm not even going to try anymore to fix this because I can't. Some of you have struggled with maybe mental illnesses and you feel stigmatized. I'm sorry, but that's not God. Some of you have struggled with areas where there's been some previous poor sexual management decisions. You've been struggling with that. That's still not God. I need help. Perhaps there's some life-dominating habits, life-dominating thought patterns. You can't break free from it. That's a help prayer. Now think of this. If it's truly your Father in heaven, who's also a holy God in heaven, would He or would He not be interested in helping you? The answer is yes, He is interested in helping you. Okay, is this a fair question? Now, I know this, that for many of us, we don't have a positive image of fatherhood. So perhaps you need to search in your memory bank for another male figure that would be helpful for this. But whatever helpful male figure you might have had, the Father in heaven exceeds that in a way that you and I can't get to. When Jesus is asked, how do we pray, the first word out of Jesus' mouth, remember this, Father, hallowed be your name. Father, you are my holy God in heaven. You love me. Second kind of prayer is thanks. Thanks. That's just exercising the muscle of generosity. Now, this is, if there is one helpful trait or habit that I would recommend and would suggest, and I've said over and over, it's this: learning to be grateful. Young kid who is in Denmark at the time was listening to podcasts from here. I don't know how he found them. Doesn't matter. So he was emailing that he was just at the end of his rope, and he was just thinking of committing suicide. He was struggling, and he's in Denmark. I'm here in Whittier. And so we were messaging or emailing, I forget how we contacted each other. We didn't speak over the phone at the time of Skype. And so, to be frank with you, I was kind of confused what to do. And so I suggested to this person who also took photos, I said, okay, let's do this. Sometimes you just need to move the needle just a little bit over and see people shift. And this is, man, I'm so convinced over the power of gratitude that if you get nothing else out of this, remember to be freaking grateful for who you. I'm always surprised when people complain about and when they live in Southern California. Are you kidding me? You live in the West. You're going to live longer. You have better health care, more food, water, housing than billions of people on the planet, and you're complaining and someone's not concerned with your feelings? Honestly, grow up. And the only way you're going to grow up is to learn to be thankful, not whining. Stop. This is why I know the power of thankfulness is this. Tell this young man, look, can you just take photos of things that are beautiful? One day, just one photo a week. Send it to me. What's beautiful to you? Now, the first photos were dark. Oh, my God. Dead animals and just weird. And then gradually, in less than a month, parks, kids, flowers. And here's what happened. He began to shift thinking to the point of being grateful instead of hating his life and hating life. This is a kid who is damaged. Now, I know for many of you, the only filter you have for looking at life is what didn't happen right for you. If you're not in chronic pain this morning, you should be thankful. If you could swallow food on your own volition and digest it, you should be thankful. Because there's people in here right now that can't. If you're able to walk on your own volition, you should be thankful. We have friends that don't. Did you drive over here? Wow, you have a car. That's amazing. Did you have shoes? Did you eat this morning? Or were you, I was going to say, were you complaining about the line at Starbucks? Come on, folks. Thanks is also being able to tell God, if you know God, you win. You know me. You've loved me. Don't you have friends who are struggling? Don't you have friends who are not doing well? Why you? Why did God pick you? Not because you're smarter, not because you're better, but He showed you mercy and kindness. That alone ought to be enough to thank Him for. Thank you. Thank you. Because I'm just an idiot from Huntington Park that gets to do this with you guys. Good morning, Park. Yes. Can anything good come out of Huntington Park? I'm sorry, Huntington Park? No. Help, thanks. Here's the next prayer. Wow. In the scriptures, it's known as praise or worship. Wow. Wow. You know what I get tripped out on still? I've said this before. What trips me out is babies. You know why? Because where babies come from. You know where they come from? Women. That still trips me out. Women make people. I don't get that. We play a very small part. I get that. But women make people. Better yet, I'm glad they're sitting down. Women make immortals. I remember when I saw my son for the first time. He was 10 minutes old. Not very smart. He was just laying around. I haven't done that. You're embarrassed, babe. You're moving in fast. fingers and stuff. And, gosh, his whole body's already here. That's amazing. And the Spirit that'll live forever. And then what the most amazing part is, the hospital let us walk out with him. We had to get a license calling a dog and they let us have a kid. Thanks for joining us, Scott. Welcome. Good morning. Aren't you amazed that food tastes good? God could have made tofu for everybody or something, right? God could not have made cilantro. Then what would life be? No salsa? Aren't you glad that God made Italians for Italian cuisine?
Taste buds.
And who discovered coffee? Thank God that He made coffee. Wow! This bean becomes this elixir from heaven inside. Wow! You should be in line at Starbucks saying, "Wow, we're gonna drink coffee, everybody!"